Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for coming today. Hope everyone's feeling pumped up. Second day of Data and AI Summit. We're glad you guys are here. We've got some, really great speakers talking this morning. So I will hand it off to them. And we'll have some time at the end for Q&A as well.
Welcome. Let's make sure my mic, are we good? Welcome. I'm Michelle Dooley with Catalyst Media, a boutique retail media consulting agency of former in-house operators that have worked in the retail media space. I'm joined by John Lopus and Bryan Smith from Hightouch and Databricks. We'll be on stage talking about retail media and how data is transformative in the retail media landscape. I want to start by a quick show of hands of who in the room is a data practitioner. Data science, data analyst, data engineer. Okay, who works with marketing data or on marketing use cases? Okay, great. And who is familiar with retail media or has a business that runs a retail media network? Okay, several. Today we're going on a journey as a brand manager. Brandon, if you will, works for Unilever and is responsible for the Dove brand. He has $150 million in advertising spend that he has to decide where to invest to drive the most performance for his brand. He is tasked with driving 20% year-over-year market share growth for Dove in the year with the $150 million. So how does he decide where to invest that money? At its core, advertising is about capturing consumer attention. It's the formula that the brand manager uses to understand where to make decisions about placing his ads. Understanding the consumer comes first, and then we have to connect what we know about that consumer to run messages in places where they show up. And we have to understand that performance. Was it worth the investment in the advertising? Did we actually influence their behavior? Did we increase market share? Data plus ads plus measurement. When Brandon is looking to decide how to invest $150 million for Dove, he is looking at where is the data that can best help me understand my customers. How can I connect that data to get relevant messages in front of the consumer? And then how do I understand if that message drove the desired behavior? Over the last 5 to 10 years, retailers have realized that they can play a critical role in each of these: data, ads, and measurement. That's what has become known as retail media. Today, we're going to talk about retail media, and we want you to leave with a clear understanding of what it is, why it's valuable for your business, and what you can do as a data practitioner to accelerate how your business is driving value in the retail media ecosystem and standing apart from everyone else. $166 billion is how much ad dollars are spent through retail media today. So if we have $150 million, Brandon the brand manager, about 40% of that is still spent on search ads. Another 30% is spent on social. And 25%, the third largest investment channel, is retail media. And retail media is actually made up of lots of channels, but it's the connection of the data to the advertising to the measurement that makes it unique and valuable. Amazon owns 77% of that market. They were the category creator. The rest of the market is $38 billion, and it's over 200 retailers that have retail media networks trying to attract advertiser investment from brand managers like Brandon. Retailers invest in retail media because they see the differentiated high value of a new business line. If retail is soft because of economic pressures or tariffs, an ads business that drives high margin revenue to the bottom line is a unique revenue stream that can offset that. In the last 12 months, the landscape has shifted from retailers asking the question, can I really afford to do this? Can I afford to have a retail media business? It's expensive. What does it mean for consumer privacy? How do I make sure I continue to put my consumers first and it's not the proverbial ad that follows you around the internet, which it's not. It's changed from, can I afford to do this, to can I afford not to do this? Walmart's CFO, in a recent earnings report, has publicly stated that membership fees and advertising income being retail media, it makes up 1/3 of their overall operating income, their bottom line, not their top line, their bottom line. This is a sizable, valuable revenue stream for retailers. So that's the why. Why are retailers and businesses, commerce media may be another thing you've heard of, why are retailers investing in building businesses that run ads as part of their otherwise core business? Let's talk about the what. There's 4 building blocks. Retail media networks arose out of the desire for digital shelf space. So brands have negotiated in-store shelf space since the beginning of retail. As e-commerce came on the scene, they wanted to show up ahead of their competitors on websites. Retailers have translated negotiating digital shelf space, landing pages, other placements on the websites, into ad placements. And that's what we call owned ad placements or owned and operated inventory. And with all the first-party consumer data that retailers see, they're able to then connect that to places that consumers also show up outside of their owned and operated properties. So myself, I may be shopping on .com. I may then go to Pinterest. I may then watch videos on YouTube. My experience as a consumer, I show up everywhere throughout the internet. I drive to the store. I get gas at a 7-Eleven or a Chevron. How are they able to connect data that can show relevant messages to me to try and influence that behavior and capture my attention? But this is all predicated on being able to show Brandon that the investment that came through retail media was the best use of his dollars, which is where closed loop measurement and proving the effectiveness of the ads comes to play. And the retailers are uniquely equipped to do this because of that first-party data that they collect. First-party data is any data that you have available that is unique and proprietary to your business. That being said, the data that is tied to the consumer is the data that's valuable for retail media. It's all tied to the consumer. We can look at things like consumer identifiers. Which ones are the most sticky? Which ones stick around? Email address, phone number, it might be part of a loyalty program. Those unique identifiers are part of what helps us connect the data to the consumer. Other data, inventory data, not that interesting to me as a retail media practitioner. Supply chain data, important for retail and core business, not that interesting from a retail media perspective. Behaviors on websites, browse-based data, purchase data, transaction data, basket size data, demographic data that I collect or that I license, psychographics that I can infer, incredibly valuable for retail media. The key is that all these data points are connected to the consumer. So you may work on projects like a 360-degree view of the customer, trying to connect all of this data. It may be called a golden record internally. These are some of the ways that we connect all of the data to better understand what the customers are doing within our 4 walls as a retailer. And the more data points you have, the more valuable that consumer is to you. The light gray circles represent data that's minimally valuable. Let's say I'm browsing on a website I haven't logged in. The only identifier or way that you could tie my browsing behavior to me would be through something in the browser, a cookie, maybe a browser ID, or if I'm shopping in store and I pay with cash, you have no way to tie that transaction to me. Minimally valuable and not valuable. When we move into the red circles, and I'm now browsing, but I've logged in, I've used my email address to say, oh, I'm going to send this to Michelle Dooley, and you can then tie all of the browse behavior that I had to me as a consumer. That's valuable. Also shopping in store, using a loyalty phone number or a card, tying that to the individual, and the more that you can do that together, in-store and online customers are probably some of the most valuable customers for retail. They're very highly engaged. We also have a lot of data that we can use to understand who they are, what they need, and what will be most valuable to them to have them come shop at our store or to have them buy our brand. Actions. What can you do as a data practitioner to increase the value of the first-party data for your business? The first question we ask in our engagements with clients is, tell me about the data that you have. How many email addresses do you have? How many phone numbers? How many physical addresses? What data can you tie to those identifiers? Being able to understand where there's overlap, email address plus phone number, the more data that you have, the more likely you can match to me when I show up on Pinterest. So if you just have michelle@gmail.com, but Pinterest has michelled@gmail.com, not my real email addresses, you can't connect. If you have Michelle and you have a phone number, and Pinterest has a phone number, or you use a crosswalk identity graph, can now connect Michelle Dooley from your system into Pinterest so that when I show up, you can show a relevant ad. Looking at ways to collect more consumer identity. Are there gaps in the way that you collect and or tie consumer data together? And then what would it look like if you have these gaps? How much headroom is there? How much upside is there if you could tie, let's say 80% of your in-store transactions are not identified. If you could increase that by 20%, and you look at the value of the customers that you currently have identified data on, how much value could that bring to the business? Bringing those insights forward can help the retail media business grow exponentially outside of your competitors. First-party data, data, ads, measurement. First-party data, helping me understand the consumer, serving messages to consumers that are relevant to influence behavior. Owned ad placements. These are ads that are shown on retailer websites or apps, or owned websites and apps. It can be landing pages, it can be search ads, it can be video ads. You might also hear this referred to on-site, owned and operated inventory, not inventory like the products in the store, but ad inventory, the placements that you have to sell on your website. And what's valuable about owned and operated is you're in control as the owner of that website. You decide how many ads, you decide what pages they're going to be on, and you set the price. The more demand that you have for your owned ad placements and your owned inventory, the higher the price and the more revenue you can make. Owned channels, another example is email. Owned channels can have 90-95% margin rates. If you're a grocer that runs a 3 to 7% margin business, and all of a sudden you can now bring in $25 to $50 million at a 90% margin business, that's why we have those operating income impacts that make this an industry that is meaningful and that is taking up so much of our time and attention. So what do these actually look like? You've seen these. You may not realize that they are retail media ad placements. The Family Dollar app, this is an ad across Mondelez brands. So Mondelez owns Oreo, Nilla Wafer, Honey Maid. It's a coupon. They're trying to use a coupon as a call to action for the consumer to act on Family Dollar's app. The display ad in the Target app in the center is for L'Oreal. As Brandon, the brand manager who works for Unilever on the Dove brand, they're trying to steal share by having an ad right beneath my product. I would want to have my Dove ad in the Target app on a L'Oreal page to show up in that spot, based on the contextual signals and the data of the consumer who's shopping. Instacart, top right, that's a display ad across the top of the page. 99.99% of the time, you're gonna see that the word sponsored shows up in the placement, which is an indication that it's an ad spot. Walmart, search. These ads are shown to me based on the keyword cookies. But why did they choose to show Mondelez products as opposed to other products? Based on the engagement with the brand advertiser that is looking to drive consumer behavior, these are the ads that came up first. So what can you do? What are the insights attached to the consumers who are engaging with your websites? Looking at browse behaviors, identifying what consumers are doing through the consumer journey. Are they engaging with certain pages more than others? Are ad placements accretive to the consumer experience? And if not, what needs to change? Looking into the data that you have access to and helping understand the consumer behaviors based on the ads on the page can help make more efficient ad placements and ensure that things like page load are not impacted. There's certain studies out there, I can't remember if it was IAB, that like a 1% or a 1 second delay in page load time can cost millions of dollars to a retailer. Don't quote me on that, I'll have to look it up and send it back later. Off-site ads. So data plus ads plus measurement. We've talked about first-party data. We've talked about ads that run on websites owned by retailers. Off-site ads are the ads that are taking the consumer experience to other websites that they show up, where they show up, and serving them relevant messages. Think social, Meta, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest. Display ads, that's the actual name of the ad itself, but it shows up on Forbes, Wall Street Journal, weather.com. Video on YouTube, short form video that's just inserted, a 30-second, 15-second, or Roku, where it shows up as an actual commercial and connected TV. Audio ads through Spotify or bought through iHeartRadio. It's the first-party data that the retailer has that is used to determine who will see what ad. And that's the key piece, is connecting to the consumer. And the consumer experience always comes first. Because if you're a retailer, you're in business to serve the customer that comes into your store. So ensuring that there's this connection between the first-party data, the identity that allows you to connect to the ads that run elsewhere. Imagine the video of the Dove commercial that was served to me in YouTube as I was browsing. This ad came through a retail media network. Data and information behind the scenes was the reason that this ad came up and showed on my browser as opposed to someone else's browser. You'll see paid search ads through Google. Best Buy placing ads on behalf of Samsung to drive commerce activity in their stores. And then the last placement is a Pinterest ad that Ulta Beauty has bought, or UB Media, on behalf of Dior brands and the J'adore perfume. It's the data behind the scenes that dictated why I saw those ads in my experience. So how can you influence the value that your business can extract from offsite ad placements? Understanding the first-party data and what is unique about your data that you have internally. What's unique and differentiated? Predictive audiences. Can you think of unique segments that are designed to drive specific outcomes? Brandon, our brand manager, needs to drive share. So he cares about new to brand. What metrics and how do you connect the data to be able to show that the investment that comes through and runs on your websites and through your channels is driving new to brand? What's the audience taxonomy that can be used to run those offsite ads to tie to each of these metrics? And finally, closed loop measurement. Retailers have to prove the value of the ads they run by directly attributing the ad impressions to the conversion activity or the purchase behavior. This requires a highly sophisticated mapping of ad impressions to transactions, some of which are coming from Google, some of which are coming from cookies, but closing the loop across not only the impressions that happen on e-commerce sites, but the impressions and the data and the purchase data that happens in store. 80% of retail sales still happen in store. So you can't just look at e-com and website purchases and think that that's representative of how the ad performed. It has to be tied together, which again, we'll come back to identity. Now, measurement methodologies have to be clear and transparent. With over 200 plus retailers playing in the retail media space, none of their measurement methodologies are similar, and none are very well understood or transparent. Being able to identify key metrics and have transparent and clear methodologies is critical in building trust with Brandon to say, hey, this actually performed like I'm telling you it performed. We talked about identity resolution. Millions of ads are running across Google, Meta, New York Times, Comcast, Hulu. Those sites where you can get identifiers back, they're going to be identifiers that aren't very sticky. Short-term identifiers like cookies, maybe IP addresses, publisher IDs, maybe an email address. Connecting those to the transactions across the bottom and the purchase data, you may have email, phone, first-party identity. It's the connection between those two that creates the closed-loop measurement. And there's a crosswalk identity graph that helps you do this that's provided by a technical partner in a lot of cases. So somebody that has this ecosystem mapped is a part of the data that you need to bring in to be able to tie the online impressions to the online and offline transactions. Some of the biggest pain points with closed-loop measurement that data analysts and data engineers and data scientists can help solve: food foundation data cleanliness. So individual item level data. If I'm Brandon, the brand manager, and I represent Dove, I'm launching a new product that is a Shea Moisture line. There's 6 SKUs, 6 individual items that are being sold in store. I need to measure those 6 items to see if they grew share. Not all of Dove. I need to know if those 6 items. But I might want to see if there's a halo to other Dove brands. Did they also buy other Dove? So mapping the individual items or the SKUs to the brand is a critical foundational piece that not many retailers have solved today. Incrementality methodologies. We talked about the fragmentation and measurement methodologies across retail media networks. Incrementality is not widely adopted. There's a lot of very interesting things that data practitioners, data scientists can work on, and incrementality is a hard problem to solve. Marketers need to know what's the minimum number of impressions I can deliver to be able to get an incremental result. That being said, not every campaign is designed to drive incremental sales. If I'm launching a brand new product and my goal is awareness, I need more people to know about this, I'm not going to have high incrementality. I'm going to have high reach. So again, tying the outcomes to the campaign objective or the brand advertiser's desired outcome is the most critical part of closed-loop measurement. Data fragmentation. The more fragmented the data, the longer it takes to get to value. And sometimes fragmentation is within retailers' own systems. Believe it or not, in 2025, there are still retail systems that use on-prem data storage. For marketing use cases, real-time and near real-time data is critical, especially when you're serving an ad. When an ad loads on a page, you go to a website, you don't wait half a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds for that ad to be served. It's served in real time. All that decisioning happens in real time. We don't often have real-time data in the retail landscape. Being able to increase the speed with which people can access and get insight from the data is key, because if you can show up with that data and insight as the decision is being made, you can outpace competition and win that ad and drive more share to your retail media network, your business, and your brand. As a data practitioner, you have the opportunity to help your organization streamline the Frankenstack. We know that technology is critical, but the people in this room are the best equipped to help decide what technology will solve these problems for the business based on the outcomes that they need to deliver for the clients. You know the technology better than anyone else, and you can help the business achieve their goals by making the data more connected, faster, and more organized. So we talked about the 4 building blocks. First-party data, placements that show up on channels that are owned by the retailer or owned by a business, placements that are curated for the audience that are on websites that are not owned by the business, and measuring the impact of those ads. Data plus ads plus measurement. Each of these has the unique value that make it worth it for Brandon to say, I'm going to put $25, $30 million into retail media investment, as opposed to just, I'm going to go and do it on my own with Pinterest, because they have access to the data and they have access to the measurement that shows the value across all of that. So making these connections in the data is critical to ensuring that the right ad is shown to the right consumer to drive the desired outcome, and that is the entire ecosystem for retail media. Data plus ads plus measurement. I'm going to have John come up and talk a little bit about some of the technologies that can help power this.
Thank you. Historically speaking, what we've often seen with commerce media, businesses, retail media in general, you often take your data and you move it to places, right? So maybe you're uploading data into LiveRamp. Maybe you have your marketing team saying like, hey, send this to Roku, upload a CSV. Half of the internet is still running on SFTPs right now, which is like a little known secret, but maybe not. You all nice job. This is complex, slow, and extremely expensive. Not to mention, if you really think of it from like a compliance perspective, you are giving each of these various vendors copies of your data. So you're essentially sending them your most trusted PII, your first-party data that you're collecting about your users, and you're saying, okay, I assume you guys won't do anything nefarious with this, right? What Hightouch and Databricks really believe is to flip this on your head. You should bring that media network to your data. So utilizing Databricks as your foundational layer to your media network, and then in a zero copy way, you can streamline and send this data to LiveRamp, to Google Ads, to Criteo, to Salesforce, to the Trade Desk, any of these partners that you have, and really utilize and turn your first-party data stack in your lakehouse into an engine that operates your retail media network. Now, what Hightouch in partnership with Databricks does is exactly that. And I know we have a lot of practitioners in the room, so in 3 kind of easy steps, I want to explain how you would do that. The first being, you just securely connect Hightouch to Databricks. So we'll sit natively on top of Databricks there as a composable CDP. Then that data team curates who are the users, what events have they done, and then even beyond that, what other types of entities and propensity models do you want to have access to? A very common use case that we often see is, hey, I'm a home improvement store. I want to sell ads to people who have a propensity to buy hammers. Maybe DeWalt is really trying to buy that or whatever it is. you now allow your marketers and your ad sales team to come into, in a self-service fashion, build out those segments, and send them to wherever they need to go. In an ad hoc manner, this could be Facebook and the offsite ads that Michelle was referring to, or just to some agency partner. And that's really what you can see at the top there. This can be used by media teams, agencies, or in-house brand sales teams. So the three major steps to do this, the first being segmentation. So you can see in this fancy little GIF that we have going, once you set up your user table, all you have to do is tell Hightouch, what events do you want to segment down upon? Is it page views? Is it in-store transactions? Is it online transactions? You can completely define this data model and your schema. So really, if you're a QSR, if you're a home improvement store, if you're a retailer, we will adhere to that schema. Then you can see on the right-hand side the actual experience for the marketer. Everyone can understand, I would hope, like a Boolean little audience builder. I want all users that have done this and haven't done that. Another advantage of doing everything on top of Databricks is you don't have to worry about data lookbacks and limitations. Most vendors will charge you for how long you can historically look at data, usually about 6 months. Well, for certain types of transactions, maybe I want to make sure that, if you bought a washing machine in the last year, you probably don't need a new one again for another couple of years. So maybe we should suppress those users. The next piece is really activation. So as Michelle was referring to, if you have johnlopus@gmail.com, I might be using johnlopus@Yahoo on Facebook, my phone number on TikTok, and I'm an anonymous browser on other sites. What Hightouch and using our identity partners allows you to do is create a golden record and also enrich those identities. So as we send these to different ad platforms, we increase your match rates. So the inherent benefit of this is that, one, you're more accurately targeting your users, and two, you can also more accurately suppress and save yourselves money from a return on ad spend perspective. There's no need to be showing ads to people that have already purchased recently. And this is kind of like a little simple way to do it where more red than black, right? The third piece, and I would actually argue the most important, is closed loop measurement. So again, because we're sitting directly on top of Databricks, you have the ability to work with partners such as the Trade Desk, among others, to write those impression and exposure logs directly back into Databricks, which then in a closed loop can then be used to build out audiences and segments, and then even beyond that, do additional analysis that Michelle was referring to. So MMM is all the rage right now, which pretty much needs to be built in-house or on top of your data store. And then beyond that, you can do all of that analytics and know what users have entered what audiences, what users have left those audiences, and you can build out those predictions on what is the next best SKU we should be targeting them with, what is the next best category, and so on. And now I'm going to hand it quickly to Bryan to talk about the three major pieces of the ecosystem.
Excellent. So we want to make sure we leave time for Q&A, so I'm going to be very brief here. We at Databricks often get called into our customers to talk about retail media. And as you heard, the foundation for everything we're doing here is data. It's data about our customers, it's data about ad impressions and how effective they are so that we can drive more revenue our way with continued engagement with these folks. But there's also a tremendous amount of orchestration with the folks that are placing the advertisements, with our digital teams, moving data back and forth between external platforms. And that's where we need tooling that allows those folks who don't write Python code or SQL statements and enjoy notebooks, that allow them to actually do that work in an efficient manner. But fundamentally, this has to be aligned with our business objectives. Relationships in retail organizations with our suppliers are already incredibly complex, and now we're bringing advertising into the mix, which changes many of our dynamics. There's also a tremendous amount of complexity in how we might put together a retail media network. We might start with simple on-site ads and then move to off-site, bring in other partners who don't sell things with us, we call non-endemic advertisement, into the mix, and do even in-store advertising. The level of complexity that we can be reaching for here can be tremendous, and so we often want to pace ourselves, right? Put some wins on the board and then build on that momentum to expand our reach in the retail media space. And that requires someone who has an understanding of the business and the advertising space that can guide us. And so that's why when we talk about retail media networks, we really want to bring 3 different types of partners together. Someone focused on the data and the analytics, someone focused on the marketers and all the orchestration within the ecosystem, and someone who speaks to the business needs and can steer us the right direction. And that's why we have Databricks, Hightouch, and Catalyst Media up here today. So with that, let me go ahead and turn it over to Q&A and just see what questions we have here in the room.